Hi, welcome back. Ollie again at the Crafty Whisk. Today I'm trying something new. I think it'll be a continual thing. It's going to be one stamp set 3 ways. So finding 3 different ways of using the one stamp kit. And I hope to make this a bit of a series. These are the 3 cards that I made. So I'm just showing you the finished products and then we will get into making them. So the stamp set that I chose was from Altenew and it's called True Friends. And as with Altenew, it comes with a beautiful booklet which can show you different ways of using the stamp set with the different colours and so on. And I'm also using a die from Reverse Confetti called Friend. And I will also be using dies from Kaisercraft Nesting Ovals. Now, unfortunately, the dies from Reverse Confetti are no longer available. They have actually closed, but you can probably find something similar on Amazon or, I dread to say it, AliExpress. Those sort of places might still be running some of the old dies and stamps. So I'm just going to be stamping the stamps multiple times because I will be doing 3 cards. So I will just put them any old way on my card, and the card I'm using is 80 pound Nina Classic Crest So White. And it doesn't matter where they are in there, just so long as I've got room for the dies to go around the edges, or you can fussy cut them out, or you can use a scan and cut machine. I just happen to have the dies from this set, so it's very handy. So I did that multiple times, and this set also comes with a stencil set, which is what I will be using today. It is brilliant for doing things like this. It makes colouring in so easy. And it does the leaves, and it gives you sort of like a couple of options with the leaves so that you can do a 2-tone effect or a 3-tone effect if you want to. So rather than die cut them first, I'm going to just manage with them all on the same sheet, and I'm going to mask off the areas I don't want to get inked up with the Heavy Doodle low tack tape. And I'll be using inks today from Altenew as well. It's their new range. Actually, I think they've got a different colour range out at the moment. This was their first colour range they brought out. I'll be using Silver Sage, Jade, Eucalyptus, Pink Sand, Dusty Rose and Toasted Mauve. And I'm going in with a normal blending brush, and then just with the little areas with a darker ink, just to give you that sort of like 2-tone effect. These sort of leaves reminded me a little bit of eucalyptus leaves here in Australia. So I wanted to kind of try and get the varying colours, or varying shades I should say, of green in the one leaf without having to use Copics and pencils afterwards. And I found this worked really, really well. And here I'm just putting a blush of the, I think it's the Dusty Rose over the green. And then I realised I used my green brush for the red tones. That was naughty. So I had to clean it and then go over it with green a bit more. So there you can sort of see the varying colours. I really, really liked how these turned out. And it just makes colouring in so much quicker with the stencils that come with the set. And Altenew have started doing that with a lot of their sets now. You don't have to buy the stencils. You don't have to buy the dies. You can buy each component separately. And you can also buy the stencils separately and still make a really pretty leafy arrangement without the stamp even. It's pretty clever how they've done this sort of thing. And I do like these new inks, and I know that they put the screw lid on so that they wouldn't, you know, if you drop your stamp pad, the lid falls off and all that kind of thing. They have gotten away from that by having a screw-on lid I actually found the screw-on lid just a little bit annoying because I couldn't access the inks quickly, but I understand why they did it, and it's really, really a good idea. I'll just have to get used to it if I buy more of the colours in this range, which I think I might. So I continued on and coloured all of them, and now I'm going to do the die cut of the word friend, and I thought I would have the shadow cut out of vellum. I thought that might give it a really, really nice effect. And I just ran it through twice because sometimes vellum can be tricky to cut, but it managed it really well. And the word friend is quite fiddly, so I'm just putting some double-sided adhesive on the back of my cardstock, and I'm going to actually make the die cut or the die friend into a sticker, which I thought would be much easier for me to have to work with. It just means you've got to run it through your die cutting machine in a couple of passes because it doesn't cut all the way through on the first pass normally, unless you put a shim in there, like an extra piece of cardstock on the top. But I found it just as easy just to run it through a couple of times. And I've just put the die upside down there because my little tittle from the from the letter I is still in the die. So I know where it is. It hasn't run away like those little tittles tend to do. And you can see how fiddly it is. It's quite a fine little word. And I could have used glue. The only problem with glue on vellum is that you can see it. So I didn't want it to be seen. You can also die cut the word out of your cardstock and then run it through a Xyron sticker little machine as well. I just thought using the double-sided tape might actually be a nice, quick and easy way to do it this time. And there you go. I think it looks really good. So now I'm just going to be starting to make up the cards, and I'm bringing out the nesting ovals from Kaisercraft. You can get nesting ovals from any of the big stamp companies. They all make them. And I'm just going to attach the panels just with some dot runner. You can use whatever adhesive you wish on this. It's just basic layering up of the rectangle panels. And this one I wanted to pop the word friend up onto a different colour to keep it all sort of tied in. But I wanted to create a kind of oval wreath with the leaves. So it's just basically fiddling around, seeing what works. If they need to go underneath, if they need to go on top. And I wanted the colour variations in there as well. And that's why I've used the earthy tones with the cardstock. And this is actually going to a very dear friend of mine. And her favourite colour is blue, which is why I've got that blue in there. I love that colour blue. So the cardstock is from Kaisercraft. The reddish one is called Rose. The blue one is Dusty Blue. And I'll be using a dewdrop, like sage green colour, for one of the other cards. And for the stamped images, I don't think I mentioned it, I used the Versafine Onyx Black because I wanted a really fine, crisp black. And I knew I wasn't going to be doing any Copic colouring, so the Versafine was perfect. And don't be afraid to cut your die pieces up as well. If you want just a particular section of the die cut leaves, cut it off and use it. You don't have to use these in their entirety. And I've just got a couple of gaps. So a couple of the individual leaves I'm just popping down. And this card did have to go through the mail, which is why I'm gluing everything down rather than raising it up onto foam squares. I'm just going to pop some glue dots to attach the word to the card. Because I'm attaching it onto vellum, I didn't want it to be seen, so I was a little bit strategic in where I placed the little glue dots, and I placed them on the blue sections that I could see through the vellum there. And the glue dots will give it a really good adhesion, and it'll give it just a tiny, tiny bit of a raise off the card. But it's perfect to post. And I'm bringing out my little tea ruler, which this week I broke. I don't believe it. It fell off my desk and it smashed. And I thought, oh no. So now I've got to order another one and wait for it to come through. I love that little 6-inch one. It is so handy. And it's not repairable. I've really smashed it. So I'm just attaching it to a standard card, 5.5 by 4.25. I should say standard US size. It's not Australian standard size. So we come to the second card now. And I wanted to do something a little bit different because that's what this video is all about. And I thought, I want to be able to use these stencils in a little bit of a different way. So I'm going to create a background with the stencils. It'll all make sense in a minute. Don't worry. Because I wanted to layer this card up so that it's actually got a lot of depth to the scene. So I thought I would just create a very full background so it looks like there's leaves everywhere without me having to layer up a lot of dyes. And this is really, really good for depth in scenes using this kind of thing or this method. So I've just used the same colour inks that I have coloured the leaves in with, and I'm just randomly putting leaves everywhere, although I do focus a lot at the bottom and then just a little bit up along each side. So it looks like a bit of a red hot mess now, but it does come together. Now I should have done this before I did the stenciling, which is why I was tapping my finger. I thought, no. I'm actually trimming it down to 5.25 by 4 inches. So that when I pop it onto the base card, I have a border all the way around it as well. So now it's just a matter of arranging the leaves to create my scene. And these colours, it doesn't really show up in the video, but they are absolutely stunning. These ink colours I have not seen from any other company. They are beautiful. They really tie in well with the Australian flora. So I think I shall be getting more as they come out. Maybe not straight away. I have to do a bit of saving, but I'll get there. So the bottom layer I'm actually just gluing straight down because that one doesn't need to have depth behind it. And then I'll be popping up the forward or more front layers up onto foam dots. And I'm using the Barely Art liquid glue. It's got a very quick, strong hold. And the foam dots I'm using are actually they're little tiny squares. I got them, I'm trying to remember now. I think I just got them from Spotlight, which is just a local sewing and craft shop, you can find this sort of thing anywhere. I think it's about a 2mm loft, so it's not a very high loft. And they're really, really small. So it was perfect for popping behind the leaves because I really didn't want to cut down tiny bits of foam. And it doesn't matter if they overhang the edge because I will be trimming those bits off later. So I've kind of sped this bit up because you don't really want to see me taking off oodles and oodles of little backings off the foam squares. So I have sped it up quite a bit. And excuse my head getting in the way all the time. I like to be able to see from directly above whereabouts I'm placing things. So occasionally my head unfortunately does get in the way. And the tweezers I'm using are reverse tweezers. So you squeeze them to open them. So that makes it very easy to be able to put glue and things on your project. So just trimming off all those extra bits, and they don't go to waste because you can pop those tiny little bits in gaps, as you'll see me do in a moment. So you can see I've got like little gaps at the bottom there, and that's where the little cut-off bits come into play. You wouldn't even know that they were bits from the side. And there we go, that's the base of the card. Now for the sentiment, I'm using one of the sentiments from the stamp set. It's called Friendship Isn't One Big Thing, It's a Million Little Things. And I will be embossing this one using white embossing powder. And the white embossing powder I'm using is from Lawn Fawn. So I'm just using my Versafine clear ink embossing pad. And make sure you use the anti-static, the little powder pouch first so you don't get embossing powder where you don't want it to be. And this white embossing powder is really fine. It's very, very nice. You just make sure it gets nice, good coverage. And then we just use the heat gun to set it. It's always a good idea to run your heat gun for a minute or so before you put it onto your project. That way it will melt the embossing powder very quickly without warping your card. Unfortunately, I get quite impatient and I don't warm it up and I end up with my card warping. So it's a matter of do as I say, not as I do. I'm just going to use the little mini Heffy Doodle trimmer. It's perfect for sentiments. But again, you can just use if you've got like a little guillotine, scissors if you're very good at cutting straight lines. I am not good at cutting straight lines. And I'm just going to glue that one on because I've already got plenty of dimension in the card. So I'm just placing it onto bits that are kind of at an even level so that doesn't warp at all. And now I'm just going to choose what colour I want it backed on. And I couldn't decide between these two, but in the end, I did go for the Dewdrop. Which isn't that one. I got that one out and then I changed my mind. Or actually, maybe it is. Maybe my monitor is showing up a different light on it. It's a really nice pale, I want to call it sage green. It's very pale. It's very pretty, but it definitely does have green undertones to it. And I'm just going to show you another method of attaching card panels to the front of cards. I must admit I don't use this method very often because I prefer to use glue, because you have wiggle room with glue. With the double-sided tapes, once it sticks down, it sticks down. So you've got to just be very confident and place it down. But using this method where you just pick up a corner of it, it is easier to be able to put it down straight. And then I just popped that panel onto a top folding note card, 5.5 by 4.25. So you just line it up and then press it down, but gently because we have the raised elements in there. Now I'd love to say that card's done, but it's not, but we will come back to it. This third method, I'll be using a resist embossing technique. This effect is really cool if you don't want to do a lot of colouring in. And I wanted the stamps to be offset off of my card panel. Because I only wanted stamping up along one side, graduating to be thicker down the bottom than when it was up the top. So I have already put the powder down on my card, and I'm just putting the Versafine, or the Versamark, sorry, embossing pad on there, and I'm just having a look to see if it all went on properly, and it's just a little bit didn't go on the skinny one. So I'm going to take off all the other ones and then redo that skinny one. And that was much better. That worked really well. So again, I'm just going to be using the Lawn Fawn Fine White embossing powder. So it's going to be white on white, which seems like it's a bit of a silly idea, but it's not. It's really effective, and the way I'm doing it, it's very subtle. It will be a really good card for masculine or feminine, for any occasion really. And here I am warming up my heat gun a little bit first, and I'm just melting all of that powder on there. And it was really difficult to pick up that I have put the embossing ink on there on camera, but in real life you can see the shine of where the stamp pad has hit the stamps, and then the stamps have transposed that onto the card. It is easier to see in real life. It was quite a bit of embossing I did here, so I had to make sure it was all melted and set. And now I'm just going to bring out my little mini waffle flower little stencil mat, and I'm going to be doing some ink blending. So I'm just using my little dauber tools, and I'm using the domed foam blenders on there, and I'm going to be graduating the colour as well as the stamps were graduating. Sorry, I'm losing my words. The stamps were graduating down to be wider at the bottom than the top. So I'm using my darker ink in the bottom corner, going up the sides, and then I'm graduating down in colour towards the centre of the card. So it's like an ombre effect. And then I'm just going over some of the areas with the red tone, which is the Dusty Rose. Just on top of the green, just to give it that like a two-tone look. It is still very reminiscent of the Australian bushland. And then I'm just going to trim that down to be 4 by 5 1/4, so that I can pop it onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 panel, which will then go onto a side folding note card. So I'm going to use foam tape to put the card panel, the white card panel, onto the base panel. And I'm just using a little bit of glue on top of the foam. Again, it might seem like it's excessive, but that gives me a chance, if it goes down crooked, I can squidgle it around a little bit so that it's nice and straight. So now the sentiment I'm using on this one is from the same stamp set again, and it's a true friend, knows your weaknesses but shows you your strengths. And I'm just going to pop that up onto foam as well, because this card by itself doesn't have any dimension, so we're creating that by raising the card panel off of the base card and by raising the sentiment strip. Using my little T ruler. And there we go, nice and straight. And then popping it onto the side folding note card. So you can use double-sided tape. I'm just using liquid glue. I prefer liquid glue. Liquid glue is also more economical as well if you make a lot of cards, because you can buy the glue in bulk and then just keep decanting it into your smaller bottles. But I wouldn't necessarily buy the cheaper double-sided tape. I tend to stick with the big brands with those, because I have had issues where I've received cards and they've used the double-sided tape, and after a year or so it all sort of falls apart, which I suppose isn't too bad because it's a card, but I like to keep my cards. I'm a bit odd that way. So I'm just going to embellish them a little bit now, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Gilded Sequins, and I'm also using the Uniquely Creative Champagne Rhinestones and the Altenew Enamel Dots in Green Valley and Red Sunset. So I'm just using my little Marvy pickup tool. You can also use a toothpick with blue tack on it. That also works. Or tweezers. Whatever you have to hand. I can't use a toothpick with blue tack on it because my cat would think it's a toy and run away with it, and I don't need him eating blue tack, which is why I've got the little picky up tool. And then on the word friend on the first card we made, I wanted it to look shiny. I sort of thought it's a little bit plain, so I'm just going over the word with glossy accents, and it will cause it to be raised off the card a little bit and give it a really, really nice glossy shine, so it looks like it's been embossed. And it's got a nice fine nozzle on it, so it's really easy to come out of the bottle and not go all over the page. And I'm just going to use a couple of the rhinestones on this one. just to finish it off. So that's the first one all done. And the second one, actually the third one, that one was, and the second one. And Miss Cleo is coming to visit. So let me know if you want to see more of this kind of thing, to see how we can stretch our supplies. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.